I'm here with the Nikon Z5 II, which is the new entry-level full-frame camera from Nikon. And when it was announced, I was actually very excited about the specs that this camera has. We have two SD card slots, we have a big battery, we have a joystick, a big viewfinder, we actually have an IBIS, an in-camera body image stabilizer, and many more features that you would only expect from more professional cameras. And it actually also has this bird eye detection autofocus that so far the Z6 Mark III, which is more expensive, is actually missing. So I was very excited to test the camera out in the field, and the last couple of days I was trying to take pictures of several different bird species with the Z5 Mark II coupled with the 180 to 600 mm lens, and in this video I want to share my first experiences with this camera. If you compare the Z5 II with the competitor like a Canon R8, you immediately see a difference in the design. The Z5 II is heavier but also bigger, and it makes it more comfortable in my opinion to hold the camera in my hands. With 700 grams it's by no means heavy, but compared to the 400 something grams of the R8 it feels of course much heavier. But there are several upsides of this design. First of all, we get two SD card slots, we get a larger battery that lasts much longer, we have a joystick for moving the autofocus point around, and we have a viewfinder that is much brighter and much larger than the one of the Canon R8. To compare it a bit more with Nikon cameras, the camera actually looks very similar as the Z6 Mark III, and I think that's a good thing, that Nikon tries to keep the body design very similar from model to model, because this means you can quite easily have a Z6 III and a Z5 II, use them in parallel, use one as the backup body without needing to readjust your muscle memory too much, because the buttons are still in the same place. The major difference that you will see is that the control dial or the mode dial here is on the right hand side on the Z5 II, just because there is no space on the left hand side. I would have preferred somehow to have it on the left hand side, because on the right hand side obviously you don't have a shoulder display now. However, at a camera of this price class we can also really not expect to have a shoulder display. There is one new button which is for the picture style or picture control. I forgot how Nikon calls this, but luckily this can also be reconfigured to basically every function that you want. The viewfinder has a resolution of 3.7 million dots, which is actually the same as a Nikon Z8 and Z9, and also the magnification of 0.8 is the same as a Z8, Z9, and that's really nice because it's actually slightly larger than my much more expensive R5 or R5 Mark II. Compared with the predecessor, the Nikon Z5, we now have a screen that you can not only tilt up and down, but they can also be used quite nicely for vertical shooting and basically tilted in every direction, so that's definitely an improvement as well. I think one or maybe even the main reason why somebody would choose a Z5 II over a Z50 II, which is a cheaper APS-C camera, is of course the full frame sensor that we have in here. It's a 24.5 megapixel sensor. As far as I know, it's the same as in the Nikon ZF. So it's not having a stacked sensor or a partially stacked design, which means we still have visible rolling shutter even at, let's say, moderate action or moderate panning speed or something. For me as a bird photographer, this meant if I have just a robin or a thrush that is perched on a stone or on a branch, I have no problem whatsoever to use the electronic shutter. I have the benefit of a faster frame rate, of silent shooting. However, if I have fast moving action, for example flying birds, and I need to pan with the camera, you can start seeing the distortion, especially in the background where all the trees or whatever you have in the background get kind of crooked. Apart from that, the sensor delivers really good image quality, which is especially important if you shoot at low light situations like dusk or dawn or during a rainy day, and especially if it's coupled with a not super fast lens such as the 180 to 600 f5.6 to 6.3 that I was using the last couple of days. Compared to the Z5, Nikon really improved the autofocus in the Z5 II a lot. So now we have a lot of different subject detection modes for like planes, cars, human, mammals, and new is also this bird eye detection. We already had this from the Z9 and Z8 and Z50 Mark II, but not from the more expensive Z6 Mark III. It was not always a big deal, but especially if the bird was a bit smaller in frame, I found that the lack of this bird eye detection in the Z6 III was really a bit annoying. It will apparently come later this year, but right now that's actually something that the cheaper Z5 II has and the Z6 III doesn't. Coming back directly to the Z5 II, how did the autofocus perform in real life? Overall, the eye detection was really good for the birds that I was taking pictures of. As with every Nikon camera that I have used so far, it performs significantly better if you try to make the autofocus area or autofocus zone a bit smaller and really put it to the place where the bird is. Otherwise, it gets quite easily distracted by flowers or by flares. But as I mentioned, I also had this a bit with the Z8 and Z9. What I really noticed that was different from the more expensive Nikon bodies was I had some problems that sometimes the autofocus really went directly on the eye of the bird, but then kind of lost it again. Or actually it still had the eye detected, but it wandered off a bit, so the bird got slightly blurry. And I also saw this in the viewfinder by the fact that the autofocus point was still on the bird's eye, but instead of green it suddenly turned yellow, which means it's not in focus. And then sometimes it came back after a second, sometimes not. So in some situations I needed to switch back to the single point AF, not because the subject detection was not working, but somehow because the camera just went away with the focus. This was not a deal breaker for me, and I'm not sure whether this has to do something with the slower readout of the sensor that we have, or if this is something that could still be improved by a firmware update. It might also be a specific camera lens combination issue, as I had not more lenses to test this camera with. Apart from the autofocus, obviously frame rate and buffer is quite important for wildlife photography. This camera can shoot up to 8 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, 9 frames per second with the first electronic shutter, and 10 frames per second if you use the completely electronic shutter, which might give you some rolling shutter. But as I mentioned, I was using it for rather stationary subjects like robins, thrushes and so on, just because it means you have no shutter shock, which could introduce some blur, and also it's quiet, which makes it just much more enjoyable. And also the blackout in the viewfinder seems to be smaller in the electronic mode than the electronic first curtain or mechanical shutter. In terms of buffer, I never had an issue. I never hit the buffer so far, so I cannot say much to that. Before I want to come to my conclusion, I want to talk briefly about some video features that the camera has. So you can shoot 4K 30 with having the full readout of the full sensor. If you want 4K 60, you are limited to a 1.5 crop, which of course can be nice sometimes in wildlife photography, but I prefer the 4K 30 where I have the full sensor in most situations, just because if I switch from photo to video, I generally prefer to have the same frame basically. If you want to have a basically slow motion with 120 frames per second, you need to go back to full HD. The camera supports N-Log, which is what I was using, but you can also shoot in N-RAW if you want even more quality and more flexibility during the post-production. Finally, something I really enjoyed again using this camera, as with all newer Nikon full-frame cameras, is the excellent image stabilizer in the video mode. And I think here the IBIS in the camera might also help, probably more than for photography with these rather long lenses. I was very happy, and it's just a joy, and I still think Nikon is the market leader at the moment when it comes to stabilization in video with these long telephoto lenses. So while this camera is more an entry-level all-around full-frame camera, not designed specifically for action photography, I think if you compare it with the predecessor, the Z5, this camera offers so many new things. The most important, of course, being the better autofocus and the faster frame rate. I think for people that want to enter the full frame world but don't want to spend too much money, maybe also don't shoot too much action photography, maybe it's really not needed to go for the Z6 III, which is still more expensive, and go for the Z5 Mark II instead. Also, if you already have a Z6 III or a Z8 and you want a not too expensive backup camera, I think the Z5 Mark II might also be for you. I linked it below in case you want to buy it, also some SD cards that I can recommend and spare batteries. And let me know in the comments if you would be interested in the future in a more in-depth comparison of the Z5 Mark II and the Z6 Mark III.